Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and you want to know about how we're helping other accredited investors keep more of their income, go to firstgencp.com/going long.
We all know the market is shifting slightly, so we want to stay on top of those economic trends and just kind of what's going on in the world and what's happening with certain areas, certain asset classes.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And I am your host, Billy Keels. So welcome back once again. It's going to be really, really awesome. Big shouts out to you. Thank you for sharing the podcast across social media platforms. Tagging us helps a lot, helps to bring other people to the podcast and build our podcast family, which is amazing. If you haven't left an honest written review as well as rating, feel free to do that. We made it very easy. We've got a video here. And then for everyone who wants to listen to the previous episodes, we've also made it super simple for you to find them. Go to firstgencp.com/podcast. Once again, firstgencp.com/podcast. It will be awesome. And listen, today, if anyone who has been in a corporate role, you know what it was like to planes, trains, automobiles, and you felt like you were just being in taking trips 2-3 hours round trip a day to work, and you really had to figure out a new way to do it. And you were fortunate enough to start to come across a podcast like this, or you found syndication or something like that. Today, you're going to hear from someone who's been in your shoes. You're going to get a chance to meet in just a couple minutes, Margaret Kozlark, and we're going to get to that just after this. Are you a busy, high-paid professional? Someone that in the previous 2 years has earned $200,000 and is expected to earn $200,000 this year? Or maybe if you filed jointly, previously you've earned $300,000 the previous 2 years and you're also expected to do that this year. Or maybe if not, either individually or jointly, you have $1 million in net worth, not including your primary residence. If you meet any of these criteria, then you're someone that the IRS considers to be an accredited investor. That probably means you're someone like an enterprise software sales executive. You may be an executive in a major corporation. You may be a doctor. You may be a lawyer, maybe a high-paid consultant. You may even work for a major sports franchise. The thing I know you have in common is that you continue to do the hard work. Like you're doing 100% of the work and you're only bringing home 50% of the reward because you continue to get crushed by your income taxes. If you are tired of this situation and you're looking for a new solution, then go to firstgencp.com/going long. When you get there, that's going to help you to start the journey so that you can begin to take back control of your taxes, take control of your time. And then also that means you're going to be able to spend more of the time that you want with the people that you love the most. And that is the way that you're going to get the personal freedom that you're looking for. So if you're looking to take back control, go ahead and go to firstgencp.com/going long and see how we can help you today. So, you know what? If you want to understand how you can go from market research exec and turn into an extremely successful long-distance real estate entrepreneur, then guess what? Today's a conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. I promise. You know why? Because today's guest not only started her career in corporate sales, I think even somewhere in the market research and doing the effectiveness as well as efficiency. So I'm sure she's going to tell us a little bit about that. She's been a VP of strategic accounts as well. She herself was also and is, I believe, she can check us up on this one, but started as a real estate agent, did that for 4 years. And I still think has a really strong connection there. And also as the co-founder, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the co-founder and real estate investor syndicator of Noblivest. Welcome to the show, Margaret Kozlark.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Billy.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. I like your energy. You've just been back from networking and you're doing all this cool stuff and awesome stuff. And I think that that's super phenomenal. And you know, one of the things that I don't even think we talked about is that I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to get 5 questions, just like every single amazing guest of the Going Long family here. I'm going to ask you 2 in the beginning, and I'm going to ask you 3 in the end. Don't worry, none of them are super, super difficult questions. But then in between, I'm going to ask you a bunch of other questions, and I don't even know what those questions are, though. So, Margaret, if you're okay, I want to ask you question number 1. Help us understand, because this is an international podcast, but we all love focusing on investing in the U.S. So help us understand, where are you located in the U.S.?
Sure. I am in Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is about an hour train ride from New York City. That's probably the easiest way to think of it.
All right, fantastic. So just 1 hour outside of NYC. So appreciate that. And then the other thing, what's the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
So I am actually very hyped today. I just got back from Braze Fest, which was an amazing real estate conference. And so literally the last 24 hours, I have been networking with all the amazing people I met there, setting up calls, setting up follow-up conversations. So you know how you come out of those conferences and you're like buzzing with energy?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of feeling awesome about that.
All right, fantastic. So I know my buddy Adam Carswell and Hunter Thompson put on that event. So I think that's fantastic. Glad you're sharing that positivity with us. And I also want to just tell you one thing. Like I have to share something with you that I am a recovering perfectionist. That means that sometimes I do things that really I should not be doing, which is like trying to tell your entire backstory in 2.5 seconds. That was never, ever going to happen. You've made too much impact. You've done way too much stuff. So first and foremost, as the host, I'd like to ask you to forgive me for trying to do something so outlandish. But most importantly, I would really like to ask for your help. And if you could share your backstory with us in your own words, and you can take a lot more than 2.5 seconds. Take the time that you want, but also highlight some of the major decisions that you've made to this point. And then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Okay, sure. That works. You know, I think what I like to tell everybody is, and I can't speak to the way it is in Europe, although I suspect it's similar, but over here in the US, I sort of did everything I was supposed to do, right? You get good grades, you get into college, you get out, you get a great corporate job, you work really long hours, work your way up the corporate ladder to that corner office. And so I did, and I did all of that. And it was great, except it really wasn't. You know, I was making great money, but I really had not a lot of work-life balance. I was commuting about an hour and a half each way to work. Really, I had little kids that I wasn't seeing. I was barely getting to the gym. So I had this one piece of my life, financial, which was going great. And the rest of it, not so much. So I realized I needed some balance. So I left that job. I did not leave corporate America, but I left the job to take another one in Connecticut that had a little less travel, but I was still traveling. And I did a bunch of that for several years, consulting, but it was still, traveling and moving. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, my kids are growing up and I'm missing plays and school events and that sort of thing. Also, somewhere along the line, by the way, I got divorced. So now I'm a single mom trying to manage this. And what happened was back in 2016, I was working one of those corporate jobs, and a good friend and colleague there said that she was going to start investing in this thing called syndication. And it was about buying apartment buildings, and I should get in on it. And so my first reaction was, well, thank you. I love that you think I could just go buy an apartment building. I'm very flattered. But I'm like a single mom. I don't have any spare cash lying around. But so she kind of, explained it. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe I could do this, but it seems too new. Like, I know the stock market. I know the stuff that we've been told about in school. I don't know anything about real estate. So let me just watch. But I was interested. So I watched for like 2 years, and I learned, and I saw the amazing return she was getting. And I'm like, okay, I think I get this, and I really like it. So that was problem number one, mindset check.
Yep.
Problem number two was still, okay, where am I going to get the money to invest in this? So again, single mom, 3 kids to support, didn't have a ton of extra cash, but what I did have was a nice 401k from that corporate job. So I took my 401k, converted it into a self-directed IRA, and that's how I made my first investment in syndication. And then I did that for about 3 years. And then meanwhile, my friends and family are kind of starting to be like, so what is this? You're buying apartment buildings? What are you doing? I want to get in on this. How do I do it? And so to be honest, I was just sort of saying, oh yeah, talk to my friend here, talk to my friend there. And then they're like, well, we want to work with you, because we know you've done this research. So I was like, okay, well, all right. Well, then I got to form an LLC and make myself a little company here. So I formed a very small little company called MGH Investments. And I started partnering with operators, joining their management team, and, bringing family and friends in. But again, I was still doing it as a solopreneur. So it was a little hard to scale. Mm-hmm. And then during the pandemic, I connected with someone in my former space, that market research space, although we didn't know each other in that world. And together we formed a company called Noblivest. And so we've been in business for about a couple of years now. We've done a bunch of deals, both fund of funds and syndications. And I'm just loving it and having a great old time.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that sounds
A little more than
absolutely.
2.5 seconds.
No, yeah. Well, you're allowed to take 2.5 seconds, and you gave us some really great highlights and some of the decisions you made, and then being able to, I think a lot of us can relate to that. I mean, I did many, many years where I was traveling across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and made a lot of sacrifices. But at the end of the day, made those sacrifices because by the end of my 40s, I left in the corporate world and don't have any plans of ever going back, right? And so when I hear that, I also missed my son's 3rd birthday. That made a big, huge statement in my mind and helped me to get into action and start doing some things. So a lot of the things that you're talking about, we can relate to. So, but at least I think about myself, right? When I got started, Margaret, I didn't have anybody coming up to me to tell me about syndications. But I had the stock market thing that happened to me, and I just didn't have any control.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed something differently. So you were really proposed syndication to get into real estate, but sometimes people get stuck into like, wait, I only know the stock market. So what was it that allowed you to actually go from probably more of a paper assets, right? Your 401k, just blindly putting it there, to actually investing in something with a team of people that was something, because you didn't have any real estate background or experience before that, did you?
I didn't, no.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
So you invested in that, and then you even took it another step, because I understand that you will invest in different geographies. So not just necessarily in Connecticut,
That's correct.
which is a whole different
nothing's
thing,
in my
right?
backyard, yeah.
Right? Because this is it's like me. I don't invest here in Spain. I invest 100% back in the States. So talk us through those two kind of things and how that worked for you.
Sure. So the first thing I would say is, like you mentioned, I was really fortunate that I was exposed to this and introduced, because so many people, they don't know what they don't know, right? So I was lucky about that, number one, no doubt about it. The second thing is I began my career as an analyst. So I was a number cruncher. So when I looked at it, it made sense, right? Yeah. I got it. In fact, I almost felt kind of stupid, like, how did I not know there was this other world outside of the stock market, which, to your point, is completely outside of our control. And it's just ups and downs. And I was like, I like this. This makes sense. I liked the value add component, which is what I tend to invest in, because I'm not relying on market appreciation. I'm forcing appreciation. I'm improving the asset. So that made a lot of sense. And then what was the second part of the question?
Well, just first of all, it was the getting the real estate in itself. And then you did something that I consider to be extremely contrarian, because when I started doing this in 2012, like investing from Europe to back in the United States, like people were like, man, you can't do that. Like you got to invest within the 30-minute rule. Like you've got to be able to get there right away. And so I know that it takes something different, even if you're investing through a syndication and you live in Connecticut, but the actual asset is in Texas. Like,
that's right.
That's that, especially in real estate. In the beginning, it was really like nobody does that. So talk to us about getting like how you started then thinking, investing in things that aren't even close, where you can drive by and see and show people and talk about, and talk to that piece, please.
Right.
Please.
So and you know what, here's the thing. There is a mindset that there is a point where you have to give up a little bit of that control, right? And I'm sure you've heard the phrase analysis paralysis, right? You can look at things 6 ways to Sunday. And at some point you have to make that decision. I'm going to take some action, right? Yep. So I absolutely looked at the data, because I was a numbers geek, I was able to kind of crunch it. Of course, you get a PPM that's like this thick with everything from the demographics of the market to what retailers are there and the jobs and job diversification, the business plan, how they're going to update the units, what percentage are 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, I was like in geek heaven, right? Every possible amount of data. So it was either an incredible amount of effort to have a complete scam, or maybe, just maybe, these people know what they're doing. And oh, by the way, they have a track record of having done it multiple times. The other thing, and it's such a simple thing, but where we have a real benefit, whether you are sitting there in Spain or I'm up here in Connecticut, is this wonderful thing called the internet, where you can go and search and be like, yep, it's a real apartment complex. Yep, there it is in Dallas. Yep, I can see it. You can, it's an asset. It's right there. So that was, I guess, there was that, and it was just, okay, I've done as much as I can do. I can sit here and be the ostrich with the head in the sand and protect my money, but it won't grow. So I took the leap.
Okay, so you took the leap, and I love it because I would even take that one step further, right? Because it's using like the way you leverage technology. Because yes, you can identify it with Google Maps, but even now, because there are so many different things, there's so many services as a service. Like you can literally pay someone $15 to go drive the property and stand there with their iPhone and actually give you a live video. Like, I mean, even back in 2012, there was not that wasn't even within the scope of possibility. But now it's just the most normal thing in the world. You can identify it on your Google Maps or whatever your preferred map thing is, and then hey, listen, I need you to go over and do this, and they don't know you, and so it's pretty third party agnostic, and you get some pretty good pictures, and you find out if the stuff that you looked on that picture, if it literally looks like that today on whatever the data you're listening or watching this, doesn't really matter. But
I'll
leveraging
even take
technology.
your idea, your step farther, and say that same person could pose as a potential tenant and get a look inside the units and maybe talk to some of the tenants and see what people are saying. So yeah. Yeah.
So this is, but yeah, I mean, we could go on and on. I like that. I like that a lot. Trusting that you're enjoying today's conversation. And you know what? If you're tired of getting crushed by taxes and you're looking for greater freedom to be able to choose what you want to do when you want to do it, make sure that you go to firstgencp.com/going long and see how we can help you today. Let's get back to the conversation. So talk to us then a little bit about the education around, because I understand that this is something that is very, very, very close to your heart. So you started in market research. So you feel very comfortable with the numbers, crushing them, looking at them, analyzing them, and then to go from that into really customer facing, right? Just taking all that analysis and selling it, right? I lived 26 years in the sales world, so I'm very comfortable there, but dealing with the spreadsheets, not my thing. So talk to us about the educational component and how important that is to you in terms of being able to attract the right people for you to serve.
So first, let me just clarify something about my background. Sure. I had a very interesting thing in that I was in market research and media research for 20 years, but I was in account management, which meant that I had to talk to like the marketers and the people and sort of translate this data. Yeah, and I felt like those skills really served me well with this. Amazing. Because I used to say, and I think it's the same thing with commercial real estate, you have to have this interesting mix of left brain and right brain, right? You have to understand the numbers, but you have to be able to communicate them and almost translate them into a format and a way that people understand. Yeah. So that said, a lot of times the type of people we are dealing with, they're either people who are just, really working hard like you and I were in those corporate jobs, making all these sacrifices at a big expense of their family or their time. So they know that the need is there. And they know there's got to be a way out, but they don't know what it is. So you have to address that pain point. How can what I'm doing, whether it's an asset class or a particular strategy, is it cash flow, is it equity upside, whatever, address their need. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is you have to meet them where they are. Some people are just so focused on what the pain is. If you provide something and it's a solution and it's like, okay, you know what, this makes sense. Great. I don't need to get into the numbers. I'm already short on time. I don't have 3 hours to check your underwriting. I'll look at the overview. It looks good. Or maybe they'll say, you know what, I'm not a big numbers person, but I'll go to your webinar. We'll have a conversation. So depending on how their learning style is that we can address them with that. But the biggest thing for me is you don't want to educate people when you have an active deal. Right? Yeah. You want to make it when you don't have that pressure of that. You know what I mean? Exactly. We love it when people just come in, watch our webinars, read our blogs. Let's talk about what these terms mean. I don't want you to feel pressured. In fact, don't invest if you're not ready, but let me help you educate to the point where you might be ready.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And I think it's phenomenal because when you are education is about helping to increase knowledge. It is not trying to make a sell.
Correct.
And so I think that's phenomenal. I love that perspective on things. And also too, I guess, when you think about how you are combining networking, right? You just talked about the very beginning. You've just come back from a networking event. Something we talked about before. Like this seems to be something that is very important to you. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you've decided to invest more of your time, your energy, your most important assets in networking and kind of for that? Because there's a lot of people who are like, networking seems cool, but I've got a lot of stuff going on. I've got my day job. I've got all this kind of stuff. Talk to that person.
Absolutely. Well, just like I was saying earlier regarding investing in general, we don't know what we don't know. I know the way that I approach things. I know the way that I may assess something or look at an opportunity, but there could be something completely different out there, either a different perspective or a different tool or a different kind of automation that can take some really laborious task and make it, so much faster. And there were some cool AI things, for example, that were discussed at this conference. So I really like to have, not just an open heart, but an open mind. I want to be porous and soak in and keep on top of everything that's going on. And then, of course, at a bare minimum, we all know the market is shifting slightly. So we want to stay on top of those economic trends and just kind of what's going on in the world and what's happening with certain areas, certain asset classes, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. Really like that. Appreciate that as well. And then listen, before we get to the going long final three, I have to ask you this question.
Sure.
Have to ask you this question. The name of your company is Nobly Vest, right?
Yes.
And there's got to be a story to that. I'm just going to go out on a limb and think that there is. If there's not, then I've got another question backed up. But that name is so cool. Like, talk to us. Where does this Nobly Vest come from?
Thank you. Well, it is a bit of a made up name, but it was a mash of the words noble and invest. And the reason for that is I think that people have a very complex relationship with money, right? I mean, going all the way back to the Bible, right? Like, money is the money is the root of all evil, but it's really the love of money is the root of all evil. Yeah, exactly. But aside from all that, I think people are conditioned. We want money, right? Like we need money. At the end of the day, money pays our bills. It keeps our house over our roof over our head, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But we almost feel like it's bad to want more money. And so we wanted to change that mindset and let people know there's nothing wrong with wanting to increase your wealth because most people are doing it for noble reasons. They want to put their kids through college. They want to take care of their elderly parents. Maybe they want to help their community or volunteer. So it's okay to want to increase your wealth. And we aim to do it nobly, not just with our investors, but with the tenants and the people that we serve on that end as well. So we combine noble and invest, and it became Nobly Vest.
Oh man, that's a phenomenal story. Really appreciate you sharing that. And I'm glad I kind of went out on a limb and took a little bit of a risk. So anyway, listen, Margaret, we're going to get into the going long final three. But the thing is, I never ask anyone the going long final three. And since you're our special guest, that would be you, unless you tell me that you're ready. So here's my question for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Of course you are. You were born ready. So here we go. Question number one. You are over in Connecticut. So I'm going to bring things on this side of the pond because even though I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, Europe has been my home for the last 22 years. So I would love for you to tell us, what is your favorite European city that you have either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
Okay, so I have been very fortunate to have gone through a fair amount of Europe. However, I feel like I've hit most of the main stuff, London, Paris, Barcelona, which I did love, by the way. Yeah. But for me, I'm going to go with the one on my bucket list that I have not made it to yet, which is Prague, because everything I've heard about Prague is that it's just a stunningly beautiful city. And I would just really, really love to get there at some point.
Yeah, I'm just going to make one suggestion. Go in the summer. I spent a month in Prague in the month of January.
Oh my gosh.
Very beautiful, extremely cold.
Freezing.
Yes.
Ice sculptures.
Okay. Yeah. And I was the ice sculpture, one of them.
Got
anyway,
it.
No, so we're going to include that in the show notes, Prague. And then the next question really has a lot of, and this is just shared experience, right? Because I have seen and met a lot of very successful people, just as you have, right? And so one of the things that I've recognized with people that are extremely successful is that they do things differently and the results they get are amazing, right? And so if we think about most of the most successful people that I know, when they put a plan together, right, Margaret, they put a plan together and they see the vision all the way through and then they start executing. And every single time without fail, they execute every single plan perfectly, which is why they get the chance to go even faster, further, more than...
Faster, further, farther.
Did I just say that? I think I messed it up. No, I'm just kidding. You're like, no, first. Of course, I just said something that was completely wrong. They don't get things right the first time and every time. Of course that doesn't happen, right? They're successful people. They're always trying new stuff. They're probably making 20, 30, 50 times more mistakes than most people, right? So that's just me kind of having fun with my podcast and everybody else knows it's a joke. So don't worry. But here's the thing. The first part was a joke. This is not a joke because the thing that people that are really, really successful do is they do make a lot of mistakes or learning opportunities, but they do something very differently. Every single time they make a mistake, a relevant mistake, they stop, they learn, and then they put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same thing happening again.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want you to think about the mistake. I don't want you to dwell there. But what I'd really love for you to do, Margaret, is to think about the lesson. What's the one lesson that you learned that you know that the Going Long family needs to hear today?
Okay. So ironically, my mistake that I think I want to talk about is actually not related to real estate. It's related to the stock market. And what that was is that when I was, like I said, having that corporate job, making all this money and everything, I sort of broke one of my cardinal rules, which is, yes, there's analysis paralysis, but you do want to do some research, right? Mm. And so I got very caught up in the whole buzz over here in the States about the marijuana stocks. Oh my gosh, marijuana pot stocks is going to be huge, going to be great. So I ran out and I bought all this canopy growth and all this other stuff. And guess what? It's been like nothing. And I don't even like to look at it because it's still out there. And I'm like, okay, Margaret, it's a long game. It's a long game. But my point is, don't get caught up in the hype. And if you do decide, do your homework, right? Like make sure it makes sense for you. I do still invest in the stock market, of course, and because I like to diversify and I do real estate, but I really like what Warren Buffett says, which is invest in what you know, right? And, short of a few, indiscretions in college, I don't really know a lot about marijuana. Yeah. So I jumped into this, industry thinking, oh, it's going to make me money because I'm like reading all the hype and it hasn't at all. Yeah. So do your homework and invest in what you know, or at least get the education for it.
There you go. And it goes back to the education. As you start to get educated, you start to learn and know more and invest in things that you feel comfortable with and understood the risk and that you really do begin to understand. So cool. So listen, last thing. This is really about question number 3, and it is helping us to fill our brains. So what is the one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family today?
I'm going to recommend the book I'm reading now, which I love so much, which is Atomic Habits. I do read a lot of business books. In fact, I actually do some book recommendations on our Instagram channel, but I am really, really loving this book. And it's all about how instead of, January 1st comes and we're like, oh, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. I'm going to do this. Just do a small action every day and get that compound effect, right?
Yep. That's it. Awesome. So I love it. Atomic Habits. And I'm just thinking to myself, this conversation is like literally flown by. They go by so fast. We're starting in the very beginning and we're talking and you're sharing about being at Race Fest and you're talking about your life and sharing the things that you did and, taking those 3-hour round trip trips to and from the office, seeing clients in your market research kind of space as an account manager. And you did that for years and years and lots of planes, trains, and automobiles. You shared with us very candidly, you've been through divorce and as a single mother with 3 children, you didn't travel quite as much, but you still kind of kept traveling. And then you had this really amazing opportunity because someone talked to you about a syndication. You took the time. You took the time, you learned, you got informed, you realized that you could take some of that money that you had in your 401k because you thought you didn't actually have it. And then you took it from there, you put it in a self-directed IRA. And guess what? That started to give you some control. It started to give you the opportunity to get involved, get educated and take action. You started taking action. Your other families and friends, they wanted to know what you were doing. So guess what? You formed your own company. You started learning more. You started getting more involved and you have continued to make a positive impact on others, educate others, and also build your asset base. And so I keep going on long and long, and I know the entire Going Long family saying, Billy, just shut up. Please just ask her the question. Please just ask her the question. So here's the thing, Margaret, everybody wants to know, how can they get in touch with you and find out more about what it is that you're doing and with you and the team at Nobly Vest?
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, noblivest.com, which is Nobli Vest. We also have a YouTube channel. We are on Instagram, and you can please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love always taking new connections. And, a lot of people helped me on my journey. And so we are very much focused on trying to help other folks as well. All
right. Fantastic. And listen, Going Long family, when you reach out to Margaret, let her know that you've already invested time listening to her and I here on the Going Long podcast. It's going to make your connection in the continuation of your conversation so much easier, so much better. So listen, Margaret.
And also anybody's welcome to book a call if they need to know any more questions as well. I forgot to mention that. Fantastic. Absolutely. Make sure you book your call, everybody. So Margaret, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, I just want to say thank you so very much for deciding to invest your time with me and all of us and wishing you continued success. Thank you so much. Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, awesome. Give me like 10 seconds. I'm just going to wrap things up and I'll get you out of here. So Going Long family, listen really quickly. Margaret shared it all. She even gave you ways to contact her, reach out to her. But most importantly, take today's conversation, share it with family and friends, talk about the content. That way it's helping you to go from theory to action, call some questions. Margaret's even given herself as someone you can reach out to. This concept wasn't clear, and start a new relationship. So while you're doing that, putting everything into action, I'll be here preparing for the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Trust that you enjoyed today's conversation. And once again, today's conversation was sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and want to find out more about how we're helping accredited investors to gain their personal freedom even faster, go to firstgencp.com/going long.